Please welcome the President and Chief Executive Officer of Corewell Health, Tina Freese Decker. President and Chief Executive Officer of Carhartt, Linda Hubbard. Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of DTE Energy, Jerry Norcia. President and Chief Executive Officer of Kelly and Chair of the 2025 Mackinac Policy Conference, Peter Quigley. And to moderate the conversation, please welcome Senior Editor of Business and Columnist at the Detroit News, Daniel Howes.
All right. So the topic, interestingly enough and appropriately, of this session is managing through turbulent times. Now, in order to frame this, I will say that just last night, the U.S. Court of International Trade found against the Trump administration on tariffs, or many of the tariffs, not all of them. And since we have been here, all of you have been here, another federal court has found against the president on tariffs as well. This has been an issue that has been top of mind for business in Michigan and investment, and all of a sudden, we now get it turning on us 180 degrees. What does that mean, Linda?
Well, you know, first of all, I would say that probably all of us that are impacted by tariffs that have global supply chains have tariff war rooms going on and all kinds of teams and crisis teams put together to try to analyze what it means to each of our businesses. And so, you know, as the inputs change, there's all kinds of new scenarios being run all of the time. I think for us, we're just trying to evaluate, you know, try to understand with better clarity where it's going to end. So the idea that things have been paused just creates a bit more uncertainty, more waiting to see, well, what does it look like in the end, so that we can really communicate to our customers and then ultimately to the consumers that would buy Carhartt. So, you know, we're kind of founded on this honest value for an honest dollar, but trying to make sure that we can create a valued, high-quality product at the right price for people that you know, have a certain limit on discretionary buys. It's really important to kind of know what that looks like, and especially in our industry where we're shipping fall product now to be sold in the stores this fall and through holiday, and so trying to predict, you know, what that product might cost as we resupply it in November and December is really unknown at this point.
But when we had a prep call to discuss this, we talked about reshoring and potentially, and now something's recently happened where now all of a sudden it's gone 180 degrees on you.
Yeah, so that would be another piece of information that we just got over the holiday weekend. The president indicated that in agreement with Secretary Bessent that there isn't really an intent to drive the textile or apparel and footwear industry back to this country. So that was new information for us. That's good information to have, because, you know, then my next question would be, and then what will that mean for where the tariffs end up on reciprocal tariffs in countries around the world where apparel and footwear is manufactured. So, I mean, it's just another example of continuing to get pieces of information, and then you're trying to, you know, make some assumptions and connect all the dots, try to get to a good decision. I mean, it's not unlike a little bit what we dealt with during COVID, where supply chains were disrupted and you were trying to make the best decision you could with, you know, 75 to 80% of the information. So I think it just speaks, you know, what do leaders have to do in that time? You have to be nimble, you have to be able to make a call even if you don't have all of the information, because at some point you have to move, and you just try to make the best that you can.
I think that what you're saying, Linda, being nimble is really important. So for healthcare, you may not think we have so much that are impacted by tariffs, but we spend about $2 billion in supplies. And so that's small supplies like gowns and gloves, and then it goes to pharmaceuticals, and then you get into the medical devices and things like smart pumps or MRI machines. And you know, today, I think 75% of medical devices are manufactured overseas. And we don't know where really the parts are coming from. We are trying to figure out where the country of origin is right now. we only know 13% of our supplies where they come from. It's a trade secret right now. And so we are working to try to figure that out. We're trying to understand that from a political perspective, but also just weather patterns, because we've seen many hurricanes come through and hit Puerto Rico with Hurricane Maria back in 2017, or most recently Hurricane Helene that impacted North Carolina, that had significant impact on us with the drugs and plastic bags and certain things that we really need for life and death in our hospitals. And when we can't get the supply or the supply that we're used to, then we have to go train our team on how to use a different supply. And when you're providing care to somebody, you want to know exactly how you're using that supply, and it should feel like an old hat to do it. And so to change that requires a whole team to work through that process. And so if we have to change because of shortage, or we can't get it, or because of cost, it adds more complexity into the system, and it really impacts patient care.
Do you see any evidence of your suppliers changing, or they're coming American alternatives to maybe a Chinese product that you're getting? I think there's this assumption by the administration that if we just put up these tariffs, then all of a sudden these businesses are magically going to sprout in, Iowa or wherever, and you're going to get your PPE from Iowa.
Well, I am from Iowa, but thanks.
No, you're not.
But I call myself a Michigander now. So since the pandemic, we have partnered with our manufacturers and distributors, and they've brought a lot onshore. Some of the basic commodity stuff that can be done. But there's a lot of stuff, again, we don't know where it's being made, that we still need to bring and have that ability. And some of it is very unique things. It could be pharmaceuticals that are made in, I can think a lot of pharmaceuticals are made in India, but the ingredients come from many other countries. You think about an MRI machine. It's like 292 parts. Where do all those parts come from, and how do you put it together? And when you need an MRI, you need an MRI to be able to diagnose what's going on. And patients don't want to wait for a diagnosis. They want to know that that machine is going to work and that they're going to be able to get the diagnosis right away and move on to their treatment. So that is the focus that we have here. So we are working with our partners to really bring things here so that we have some more stability and certainty. But we want to partner with people to understand and have that transparency so we can better mitigate the risks that are coming forward.
And you think about global supply chains have evolved, have really been built over the last 35, 40 years for so many industries. And to try to rebuild that in a year or 2 years is not realistic, even, just all of the components that.
Well, it runs counter to comparative advantage, too. I mean, there's a reason that a lot of these products are made in other parts of the world for labor costs and other costs associated with them, and you can't import that into the United States and expect it to get the same product at the same price, right?
Absolutely. And I do think, initially when the tariffs discussions were happening, I think there maybe was some misinformation or confusion from consumers that, it didn't potentially end up as a cost ultimately to consumers for the most part. But now I think that is pretty much understood by consumers. I think actually the regional the chamber actually issued a survey at the beginning of this week that said, yes, consumers get that. They may have differing points of view on whether tariffs are good or not, depending on what the long-term benefits might be versus the short-term pain. But consumers do get that, so I think that message has gotten through. But I'm not sure that all of the costs, I know for certain that the costs associated with even the 10% tariffs that are being paid right now has really made its way all the way through yet.
Jerry, for the last 5-ish years, I mean, electrification has been the thing. It's certainly been the thing in this state and in the bellwether auto industry. You now have an administration that is essentially gutting a lot of the incentive structures, both for producers and consumers. And I'm wondering kind of what you think kind of impact that's going to be on people like you, who and others, competitors, who are having to provide that service, are you continuing to put in chargers and address electrification or not?
Well, just to give you a feel for it, a handful of years ago, we were seeing about 1,000 EVs connect to our grid a month. And, 2 years ago, that jumped up to about 2,000 EVs a month. And this year, we're seeing about 2,500 EVs a month connect to the grid. So we're still seeing continued connections, but it's not ramping as quickly as everybody thought. It's probably on the lower, like we had a bunch of scenarios, low, medium, and high, and I think we're kind of riding the low curve right now. One of the encouraging things is that there's a lot of really nice products out there that at least the big three have introduced. And,
Exactly.
And so they're starting to move more product into the market. So we're still seeing activity, but not as much growth as we had expected. But one area of electrification that is presenting a really significant opportunity in this moment is data centers. They're huge power consumers. Just to give you a feel for it, we're talking to a handful of parties that are really big in the AI space, and they want to build data centers in Michigan. Ever since the governor signed legislation that encouraged data centers to come to Michigan, we've seen a lot of action. And we're hoping to get something done by the end of this year, but it could drive anywhere from 10 to a 30% increase in our demand. And, it's going to drive a lot of economic development activity in the state, thousands of jobs, probably for about a decade, because it takes about anywhere from 5 years to a decade to build out these data centers. Then the property tax benefit to the community where they locate, and then just the ecosystem that builds around them, like the technology ecosystem that builds around these data centers is just incredible. And they want to be very close to metropolitan centers. And if you wanted to see what happens when they move in, like in Columbus, it's just incredible. Columbus, Ohio, it's incredible what's happened when the data centers moved in, the type of investment and growth and high-tech ecosystem that kind of builds around them. So it's something we're really excited about. The other thing we're really excited about is when these guys come in, they're not that price sensitive, so they help fund some of the infrastructure we have to build to rebuild our grid, for example. They help push bills down so that we can make our products more affordable to residential customers. So there's multiple benefits from this growth, much like the EV growth would have provided a lot of benefit to our customers because they would have driven bills down because they're using more juice on the system during off-peak periods, for example.
How does the regulatory turbulence of this current administration impact a business like yours? I mean, I think we have a good handle on Linda's and Tina's, but...
So the tariffs really haven't had much impact on us. We're investing about $4.5 billion of capital every year to rebuild the grid, build new generation, rebuild some of our gas infrastructure. About 80 to 85% of that is contracted work. It's actually labor, and the balance is materials. So the impact of tariffs on us in the worst case is probably a 1 or 2% impact. So not much of an impact. The bigger impact is the rollback of the Inflation Reduction Act. There was a lot of tax incentives in that package that we would flow right to customers for renewable generation, renewable assets like wind and solar and battery systems and nuclear. So that's, as we build out those assets, we're pretty good through 2027 and 2028. But beyond that, it's going to be a big tax increase on utility bills because of this sort of rollback of tax incentives that we're just a pass through. It goes right to our customers. So that's the biggest impact, and it's going to make renewables, if we continue on a journey of renewables, which I think we have to under state law, it's going to create about a 30% headwind on pricing. So we're going to have to find offsets for that sort of thing. So it's pretty impactful once you get into the post-2028 period.
Well, a lot of it seems to have to redound to the same thing, and that is that costs are going to increase of some of this turbulence for a lot of people. Yeah. Tariffs obviously are raising costs. I would assume it's going to raise your operating costs and affect patients potentially.
It will impact patients. And so there's a couple things here. First off, in turbulence is Medicaid. Medicaid is in the House bill. It's being discussed in the Senate bill right now. There's two main elements of that. One is coverage for people who are currently on Medicaid, and the second is the funding for Medicaid. Both impact the state of Michigan. There are, I think it's 30% of people in Michigan are on Medicaid. 50% of kids are covered by Michigan. We all know somebody who is covered by Medicaid today. And even if you don't know somebody, we probably will see it impact us if we don't have Medicaid because of the care. So they may show up in the ER and not have the primary care utilization that they need. They might not be able to work anymore, and so then they're not productive in society. So having funding and having coverage for Medicaid and even the individual insurance is going to have an impact on us. The uncertainty about what is in the House bill and what is in the Senate bill is requiring us to do a lot of scenario planning of what does that mean and how do we do this as we go forward. The big thing I want to make sure we're looking at is how do we attract the right people, the talented people to be here in Michigan? Because we need the top doctors and the top nurses to care for our community. I want to live in a state that is the top 10 in the country. But right now, we are reimbursed in the bottom 10. And we need to make sure that we are paid appropriately, that the funding exists so that we can keep attracting people here so we can do amazing, innovative, provide care and new technologies and new research so that we can take care of our communities and we can be in the top quartile or the top percentile for quality. That's our focus. That's where we want to go. And having that instability harms us in that area.
She walked and set you up really good to talk about people and manufacturing.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. Going back quickly, though, to the tariffs, we aren't directly impacted by tariffs unless somebody issues a tariff on people. Hopefully that won't happen. Mm-hmm. But we have tens of thousands of customers across the U.S., mm-hmm. and I could tell you 10,000 or more stories just like the ones you heard from Tina and Linda. Every business, small to global enterprises, are struggling with that. And I think the turbulence is unfortunate because people are grappling with all sorts of new things and trying to figure out. But I think rather than focusing on talent, rather than focusing on making Michigan a Big Ten or top 10 state, we're focusing on non-productive scenario planning, what ifs, what's in the Senate bill, what's in the House bill. And I had a CEO, customer of ours, who said, in his view, turbulence is the new constant. And I think that's a really sort of unfortunate place to operate in because... But
do you think he or she is right?
Well, I listened to the comments you've heard today, and I think we've all heard this week a bevy of concern about the uncertainty and the turbulence and the whiplashing and the pinballing. That's really difficult to operate a business in when you have to deal with the daily. You opened giving us a 12-hour
Yeah, I mean, and
example.
We could be looking at this for another 3+ years of turbulence, moving forward, moving to one side, moving to the other side. I spend a lot of time talking to the auto industry, and they got their own huge suite of issues. When they get some of the tariffs pulled back, there's still a lot of other ones that are still on them. They're looking at the USMCA being renegotiated next year. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And they don't seem to be able to get any clarity. One of the questions I'd have for you is there's all this talk from the administration, from the president on down, of bringing and reshoring manufacturing back to the United States. Something tells me we don't have the people to do those jobs if that were to even happen.
Yeah,
what's your take on that?
Yeah, so we have a lot of exposure to the semiconductor industry, so we saw a lot of initial reshoring activities because of the Semiconductor Act, and we saw how difficult it is to find the talent you need to build a fab and to do a manufacturing facility that there aren't a lot of in the United States. So there isn't a talent base that you can draw from. You can reskill, you can upskill, but it takes time to do that. And I think that's what we're going to have to deal with if and when there is large numbers of manufacturing operations being open. But I would say from our experience that when people build new manufacturing, we are a supplier to a company that sells pens to big box stores, and their biggest time of the year is right about now because they're short, stocking shelves for the school year. They built a new plant and cut by 80% the number of people that are operating in the new plant. And I think that's going to happen when Steve Jobs builds an Apple. He's going to do it in a way that may very well not need nearly as many people as a manufacturing facility that existed here 10 or 15 years ago. And if that's not the issue, I think the issue of finding people. We have trouble today even finding people that are willing to work in a manufacturing floor for a decent wage, and I don't know that that's going to change overnight when all this manufacturing is coming back to the U.S.
Mayor Mike Duggan yesterday made a whole pitch around education and what he would do if he were elected governor. You talk about not being able to find people. I'd love to go right around here and say, is the fact that Michigan's public education is largely, I'm not going to say exclusively, largely broken, a disincentive and a problem for all of you to find talent in your businesses?
I mean, I was just going to add, listening to you, Peter, about the conversations that were had yesterday and even today around career technical education and just, upskilling people to plants that have more automation and robotics still need a lot of people to make sure that those are running efficiently, effectively, and it's a skill, that you can actually get certification for, and I do think that has a lot of merit, particularly for Michigan. If you look at the fact that we have a higher unemployment rate than the rest of the country, I mean, there's some opportunities that we're not leaning into that we could do a better job of, I think, to provide great wages for people.
Yeah. One of the things I'm concerned about is we have an aging population. We also have an aging population of those providing care to that population. And so we're going to need more people to be caregivers. And so we are doing everything we can to create a bigger pipeline. And we're working with all the universities and colleges and high schools to get more people in there, but we're creating new pipelines. We have 11 new apprenticeships that are coming through. Last year we graduated 80. This year we've graduated 23 so far. One of those people just graduated. She put on a cap and gown for the first time because she couldn't put it on during her high school graduation because it was during COVID. We are helping people connect from an apprenticeship to get a medical assistant role, to then get on to be a nurse, to then go on to something else. So we're trying to really build that pipeline, but it's an learn as you earn program, and it's being really creative. We created our first hiring center because one of the things we found out is that we needed to make sure we were more connected in the community. And when we did that, we had 30 to 50 people show up per day looking for some jobs. And they wanted the one-on-one interviews, and so we did those interviews. Now we have people in the pipeline, in roles that they can then start to earn and learn as we move forward. So it's going to take a lot of creativity and a lot of partnerships to really move this forward. It can't be the same old way we've done it before.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, ours has been really interesting. Like when we think about professional ranks like engineers, accountants, IT, sort of professionals, that's not been that hard because we got great universities that graduate a lot of great people in those categories. Where we've had the greatest struggle is with our trades, like line workers, gas fitters, electricians, tree trimmers. So what we had to do there is we actually got together with a few other corporations and we upgraded trade schools. The Detroit Public School System, for example. Like we completely rebuilt the Randolph Trade School. Like there used to be 100 or 200 students attending that school. And we found the school in pretty significant state of disrepair and also without teachers that were really qualified for the trades that they were training for. So what we did is we upgraded all the assets in that school and then we supplemented the salaries of the teachers so that we could get like a licensed line worker that had been in the business for 30 years and now wanted to teach his trade to young kids. So that went from a school that took 200 kids in a year to now runs with about 700 kids and is graduating a lot of kids every year. And we also created an adult program at night. So then we went to Breithoff and did the same thing. Then the third thing we did is we created a tree trim academy in Detroit. We worked with Mayor Duggan and the IBEW and Focus Hope. And we took disadvantaged kids from neighborhoods in Detroit and the suburbs that, needed wraparound services like Focus Hope, our partner provided, where we had to upgrade their reading skills, their math skills, teach them how to come to work every day, how to dress, how to behave. So they go through this boot camp, and then they come to the apprenticeship program with the IBEW. We partner with the IBEW, and we built up these kids to be tree trimmers. And then from a tree trimmer, you go on to become a line worker after 4 or 5 years of
It's good
apprenticeship.
money, isn't it?
$150,000 a year.
Lord knows what those guys do. I shudder every time I watch
well,
them.
the first thing is they got to get over the fear of heights. So that's,
No, I'm talking about reaching over the wires with the big, long sheaths on.
being afraid of heights is worse than reaching over the wires. I mean, if you can't get past the fear of heights, you're not going to make it. So we have.
But are you getting repeat people? I mean, are you getting they filling up once they move through the program? You're
Yeah,
getting
like
more?
we bring in about 50 to 100 a year into that tree trim program. So that's one program. Then we got, our best partner in all of this. I think, we've got great partnerships with our unions. About half our workforce is unionized, and the IBEW and the UWUA are the biggest unions that we deal with. And they got very elaborate and professional training programs for their apprentices. So we put in about 100 people a year into our apprenticeship programs. So between the Tree Trim Academy and the apprenticeship programs through our unions, we're not having a problem. Like we used to have a problem about 10 years ago, and because we were losing more workers than we were gaining, and we just didn't have enough apprenticeship programs. And so we built this apprenticeship program. Then the Tree Trim Academy was a home run, because we're also taking returning citizens into the tree trimming program, and that's a wonderful program. I mean, there's some great stories there about people who completely turned their lives around.
Are your peers in other states having to do this the same extent?
They do, because the amount of spending in the utility world, especially the electric business, to rebuild these old grids that were built after World War II, primarily, it's just massive across the country. And the need for skilled trades and construction workers to build power plants, to build solar fields, to rebuild wires and poles and transformers and substations. I mean, it's just the amount of investment in our industry is just skyrocketed. Just to give you an example here at DTE, 10 years ago we were putting maybe $200 million a year into the grid. This year we'll invest $1.5 billion in the grid. So, and that's all people. 80% of that money is people. The beauty of it, they're all Michigan people. So all that money is going back into Michigan. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty cool.
Is public education part of the turbulence that we're talking about here? I'm curious because that's where a lot of these people come from. You bring them into your programs and various things. Is it part of having something you actively feel like you're managing, or there's either a lack of quality or people that aren't prepared for the kind of jobs that you have today and into tomorrow?
I think from our perspective, we just had to get really specific about our needs. We can't, just rely on someone coming out of high school and be able to go into an apprenticeship program. So we had to go a lot deeper and get a lot more specific with schools and actually help sponsor those schools to run the programs that we needed to get the trades we needed. So that was really what we were finding.
Mm-hmm. Same for us. We've just gotten very specific and very connected, and from a partnership perspective. We put out a job shadow on our website. We had 1,000 high school students apply. In fact, it broke our website. And so we had to pull it down. But I talked to one of those students that came in, and she loved it because she got to see what an ER was like and following a nurse around. We need to make sure we have those because they have to have that experience to want to go into healthcare. It's a hard business to go into. It's hard to provide healthcare on a day-to-day basis. And so to get the students that are interested in it, we want to take them and put them into all these apprenticeship programs, into these earn-to-learn programs, into these shadowing, so that we can build them up and really have that partnership going
Daniel,
forward.
I think you need to do it holistically. You need to start early. You need to have a program so that, Dean is a leader talking to people in high school, because usually they find themselves in senior year and you're having that conversation with them. You need to start having that conversation when they're in 7th and 8th grade and introduce different professions to them. Mm-hmm. And States that have done that have been successful in creating talent pools and vibrant workforces because it extends from pre-K to post-high school, and there are different paths. Some 4-year degrees, 2-year degrees, apprenticeships, trades, but it's part of a program.
I'd say for us, our corporate headquarters are here in Michigan, so the design and product development piece of our business is here. And I would say that the resurgence of Detroit and the cool factor of Detroit, we used to have a hard time getting designers to come from New York or LA.
Not
and
now.
Now young people want to be part of the great vibes in the city. So it's been a real plus, from a national brand standpoint, to be able to attract people to the city that want to move here and make a life here. From a standpoint of our sewing plants and distribution, that's in Kentucky and Tennessee, so that would be more around the technical training piece of it.
In conclusion, I want to ask you all one question. About in 2017-ish, I was up here and Sergio Marchionne was here. Trump had been elected. We didn't know what exactly that portended for the country or the economy. And I said to him, how do you manage this situation with this kind of president, volatile president? And he looked at me and he said, he's the president, we adapt. And I'm curious, I'm going to go around and ask each of you, how do you feel like you're having to adapt to manage this turbulence that we are now going through? And there's no indication that from a policy perspective it's going to necessarily stop or slow down. Start right here.
Well, in healthcare, we're always adapting. It feels like the last 5 years have been doing that. But I would say that one thing we don't adapt to is our mission. Our mission is always front and center, and we're always working to make sure that we're taking care of people in our communities. We are always innovating. And so when we look at that as how do we innovate and how do we make sure we're providing care in a better way and adapt that innovation so that it's better for the people that we're serving. So I'll just give a quick example that I've shared with people before here. We are innovating in how you do mitral valve surgery. Typically in a mitral valve surgery, you have to cut the chest, you have to break the ribs, you have to cut through all the muscle, and then you repair the mitral valve. And you're in the hospital for a while, you're at home recovering for a while, you're on drugs. What we're doing, and we're one of 3 places in the country that are doing this, is we're actually doing a robotic mitral valve repair. We're going in through the side through your ribs. We're slipping through with the size of your pinky through your ribs, through the muscles, not cutting them. And then we're getting there and using robotics to repair a mitral valve that is like tissue paper.
Ugh.
It's amazing. I went in and saw the patient that we did this for the first time. He wasn't on any drugs. He was standing up. He didn't have a scar down his chest. He had no work restrictions. And he was going home to be with his family. And so that is innovating, adapting, saving money in terms of cost for healthcare, but it takes a team to do that because we had to build the team from a cardiologist, surgeon, nurses, to make sure that we're doing that forward. And so that's how we're adapting and moving forward because that's where we believe people want us to go, is that better healthcare.
I know about having the chest cracked. I had my chest cracked. What about you?
I'm going to just be quick about it and say, like Tina, focus on our mission. Close out the external around you and say, what are you here for? You're here for to serve and protect hardworking people, build durable products for them, and whatever that we need to do to move that forward. That's my primary role. And there's all kinds of external challenges we'll always have to deal with as leaders that we just move forward.
Makes sense. Jerry?
I think at DTE, we've been able to build a team that can adapt and be resilient. So it's really about our people. If you look at what we've weathered over the last handful of years and had some of our best years, is historic pandemic and historic weather events. And we've built a team that can take all of that and still make it happen.
Yeah, I would just, I think my job is to let people focus on what they can control and let me worry about the stuff that's going on outside and give them the comfort that we're going to get through this. We've been around for 80 years, and then just let's stick to our purpose, and we'll get through this together.
Makes sense. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.